Welcome to the Innovate Podcast, a place for auction business owners who have built successful operations but now want to scale their companies and leave a lasting legacy in the industry. If you want more growth, less grind, you've come to the right place.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Innovate Podcast. I have with me, as always, Jodi Amaya. Thank you for joining. Today, we are going to be talking about Simulcast. And so this is a particular product that Innovate offers, but it's attached to a larger story. And so I want to set this up a little bit here. So we have talked in the past about Simulcast, which is a way to essentially digitize the auction environment online through video and many other different features. But so I'm not introducing it because we have talked about it before, but I want to talk about this shift from a physical auction environment to a digital auction environment. And there's a lot that goes into that story. And we've talked a lot about technology on this show. And of course, over the last 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years, technology has been a driving storyline. But there's something here that I want to talk about, especially for bid callers and auction owners and folks in the industry who are listening to this show and might have some hesitation about this technology story, because I can imagine what people hear when we're talking about technology is like, oh, my job is getting replaced, or I'm going to get phased out, just like, manufacturers were 30 years ago, or whatever these kind of stories are. And we talked about last episode with Nathan. He mentioned this shift of where taxis got really disrupted by Uber, like in New York City especially. Or you have Blockbuster getting disrupted by Netflix, or you have Kodak getting disrupted by the digital camera. And of course, all of the stories and mechanics that unfold in that. And so I want to talk about the human side of auctioneering and how important that is, because many who are working in this industry love this industry, and they love the human side of the industry where there's the energy and the chanting and the cheers, and there's just so much that goes into that. And so I want to talk about that with you, Jodi, because you've seen so much of this transition. And as we were talking and kind of prepping for the show, is something that you mentioned is it's important to pay attention to these changes, and not necessarily through fear. So talk to me a little bit about this like kind of transition from a physical to a digital environment using tools like Simulcast, and we'll get into those details in a little bit. But of what you'd like listeners to take away from this kind of show. So, paying attention to these changes, thinking about that fear and what they might be thinking about that technological shift. And then we'll get into Simulcast specifically after that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think as you were talking, Brandon, it reminded me of the beginning of Innovate. When we started Innovate, we only had an online auction bidding platform. And it was popular because of COVID, that the world made that shift. I would say that most people would probably agree with me in the auction space that it was not the most technical, industry, that the technology was outdated for the most part. So as far as, streaming and, all the things that you have for online auctions, but with we ended up building Simulcast as a product that we released a little more than a year ago because our auction community and customers still wanted that live interaction. And having that bid caller, it is an awesome experience. Well, it's either really good or really bad, to be honest. Karaoke, there's some bad bid callers out there. I wasn't going to go there, but I just thought about it.
That's hilarious.
But I think it's important, especially if you're a business owner, to be the expert in your field. And if the industry is making a shift, it is natural to resist those things, especially if you're unfamiliar with it. I, believe it or not, am not a techie girl. I was just an end user who appreciated what tech could do for my business.
Yeah.
And got frustrated with technology, offers out there, other solutions, and created Innovate for that reason. So I think being able to offer or being able to show your buyers that simulcast experience is still important. It's what your buyers, they're trying to connect in some way. And I think hearing the auctioneer, hearing that cadence, seeing how other buyers are responding, looking at nonverbal cues, those are things that buyers look for to learn more about you and your company and how you run your company, how you sell your inventory. So the simulcast is one way of doing it. But in today's world, if people are really honest with themselves, most of their buyers are online bidding through the simulcast format. So the audiences that are in person are less and less. I still love going to an auction and go to my customer simulcast auctions. That experience and that energy is so much fun. But these days, 60 to even more percentages are online bidding through simulcast formats.
That's fascinating. So it's sort of like, and I don't want to be glib at all, but it's sort of like it is happening. Whether you like it or not, this transition is happening. It appears that a lot of customers, a lot of bidders do actually like buying things from the comfort of their home.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's not to be glib. There's a huge disruption and things can be veerful, lots of moving parts, lots of things happening, but it is happening. And so it's important to take a look at that and keep tabs on it.
Exactly. So whether you as an auctioneer or you as an auction company made that change or that transition to being fully online or not, I don't think that is required. I don't think being fully online is a must-have. But the buyer audience adapted since 2020. They were forced, to go. I don't go to the mall anymore. I buy, from online stores. Or I click buttons and it shows up at my front porch somehow, like Christmas, I always say those influencers are things that are out there, I can just double click a button on my iPhone. And it's like Santa Claus shows up, but
it's so scary. I know,
but then it hits my bill and it's not Santa Claus. So, the technology is advancing and buyers are adapting to those advancements.
That's right. My wife and I don't even go to Costco anymore. We just get Instacart and it gets delivered to our doorstep. And it's wonderful.
Isn't that great?
And I like Costco. I like the taste, the little tastes
and
all
sample.
that. It's great. The samples. Yeah,
I know.
But here we are. It's 2025. So we're moving along.
Yes.
Okay. So totally get that. Thank you for elaborating on that a little bit, because I want our listeners to understand there's these major stories and that do affect, what we're doing here. But this is a key component that you can get the best of both worlds if done right. And there's a lot of advantages that come out of it. I think, flexibility, the options to do different formats and stuff like that. We'll get into some of that, but I think it can be a really amazing thing. Okay, so let's start here with talking about simulcast. So what does video and audio really add for the bidder or the customer in that kind of experience, that buyer experience?
I think the auctioneer still is the showman, that they get to engage with that buyer through online technology, and if the buyer's sitting right in front of them. And, men say all kinds of things about women shopping, but I've been to a lot of auctions, and I know I talk about heavy equipment and auto and industrial and all that kind of stuff because that's my background. But all of those men, they were competitive over that auctioneer would get them going. And so they would bid a little more and bid a little more, and they would get competitive and be so happy that they were the winner of that item. And so the auctioneer sets the tone, sets the pace, creates the energy. I have been in a room where there's a bad auctioneer, and the people aren't raising their hands, and then switch auctioneers, and it just feels a whole new level of energy. And so people really love that. And I think, some part of it is that it's hard to replace that energy in a digital world, but we can get creative and we can do things that can also set your brand apart. And I think that's something that everybody needs to think about.
Okay, so yes, a small aside. What you talked about reminded me of. I went to this Christmas market, and all these groups of women had on like matching sweatshirts, and they were all
Yes.
getting so excited about going to the little booths. And it's kind of like that for an auction environment with a bunch of men, just in a different.
They're
in a different way. That's so
competing
funny.
for the same item. I'm competing with Tracy over a pair of shoes at Nordstrom's. If I see a rack that all of a sudden I'm over here looking at these shoes, but then I see a bunch of women over here, you bet I'm going over there. Like the frenzy, it's kind of like the Black Friday, shopping. They're competing. And that's why sometimes an auction will bring in a better price than retail, because you've got, depending upon how many items are there, and if they're competing over that item, you can get a really good price, and a really good auctioneer, sees that opportunity and goes for it.
Yeah, I love that. So it's triggering human scarcity, that we see this thing with like, I gotta have it.
I gotta have it.
That's great.
I need that now. I need those shoes,
So in a simulcast environment, in this digital environment that we're talking about, you don't lose that exactly. You
Right.
still can have a lot of that. It just can now translate through that medium to a digital buyer as well. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So they're watching you work the room, that sort of thing. And so would you say that it's fair that the auctioneer, the bid caller, still has a big influence on how that transaction will take place, or how that environment is created?
I think it's an opportunity to connect with your buyers. I think there's multiple ways. Right now, we're talking about the bid caller, the auctioneer. There's multiple ways to connect through your inventory. I think we're going to talk some more about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I do think, if it's a human-to-human element that, in Simulcast, you have a clerk that is, receiving bids from the online audience. That's another point of human engagement, that even if they're online, they're still talking to someone. Sometimes buyers like that, if that's their preference. But overall, I would say that the format isn't going to stop the buyer from bidding if they're interested in the inventory you have for sale. So I think they do like that human interaction. But I don't think it stops them from making a purchase.
I like that. So there's two components here. So there's like the video based, translation of a physical world into a digital world. But then there's a part of it where it's online only, digital only auction as well. And it's the same. It's not the same, like, the chanting and the crowd and the sounds and all that kind of stuff. It's just through a screen. But what you mentioned before, when we were talking about the show, was like the inventory is what sets you apart. Can you talk more about that? Like, what do you mean by that? What does that look like?
Yeah. In my earlier years, the inventory was, the reason why people show up. That's still the case today. But so we would work hard on creating good inventory descriptions. But then our inventory was not ever on our storefront, on our website. And so that's something that I am, working with customers on now, is to get your inventory on your storefront. But also, how can you create what I call brand standards or inventory standards? I was actually on the phone with a customer today who was saying, when I send a person out to write up inventory, I can't, trust him. He's going to forget the VIN number. He's not going to take 4 photos. He's going to take 2. So, it is so important that your buyer, we used to call it kicking the tires, that they would show up before the auction, kick the tires, lift the hood, see if it's running, if it's not running. So if you're going to have a digital presence, your inventory needs to be consistent. It needs to have videos. It needs to have photos that, show. I like multiple videos. I like to see it, going in front and reverse. I like to see the engine running, it lifting, it moving. If you have like functional inventory. I also think some things that I don't see people doing is get some personality. Like, it doesn't just have to be mechanical and yada, yada, boring. Like, you are on a video to show your buyer, so maybe some examples of, seeing the bucket swing and saying, look at that, or make a joke, or talk to your audience while you're doing these videos. It doesn't just have to be like a boring walk around, because you want to get that buyer engagement. Maybe you have a really funny inspector, who has some personality, but also has knowledge of the inventory that they're writing up. I think buyers would like to hear what he has to say, like the hood lifted and, it almost fell on him, or, whatever. I don't know. Just add some personality to your videos to set your brand apart, because the buyers are interested in the inventory more so than the format.
So, okay, there's a couple things going on here. One is you can still get that showmanship, like you're talking about, as if you like the bid calling kind of idea, or if you're an auction owner that has that kind of personality, likes bringing people in. You can still do that. It just looks different. Instead of doing that in a, from a stage or something, it's more of like a 20-second video. So what I'm imagining, I have this vision of folks becoming like TikTok influencers. They're like running through their inventory and they're just like having a good time, but it's just with a phone, maybe taking fun videos and things like that.
I saw this thing the other day about this realtor who's going viral because she is the rooms of the house, but then she's all of a sudden just popping up in the room and she's like saying something funny, or she's like, can you imagine eating your breakfast here? It just isn't the, monotone, this living room is pretty, it's not, it's more to it. It's different. She's setting herself apart and she's creating a buyer audience. People also can see her face. I don't think it's the same, like the being able to talk to your buyers on an inventory video can replace an auctioneer in any kind of means. That energy and a good auctioneer is great, but you have an opportunity to engage with your buyer when you're out looking at this inventory. Maybe you don't give it a 5-star rating, but you say, hey, this thing started the very first second I turned it on. They want to know that. They want to hear from somebody who's physically touching it.
It makes me think of kind of what you're talking about, the viral realtor. I've seen some viral restaurants, really. I mean, like it's like an Asian restaurant is one I'm thinking of. They have hundreds of thousands of followers because they just do these funny videos where they take like a meme on Instagram or TikTok, and they do this hard cut and they change into like them promoting the restaurant, and it's hilarious. They're so funny, but it's hundreds of thousands of people watching their videos and wanting their food now. But I can imagine though that's pretty daunting. I mean, that sounds daunting to me at all. I don't even make videos like that.
And not everybody has the right personality to be funny, but they can just be educated. And but I think all I'm saying is that it is your brand. The customer is interested, or the buyer is interested in the inventory. How much can you tell them in that 20-second video that make them go, oh, okay, like that was Rex inspecting that inventory. Now I go look at some other inventory. I trusted what Rex said on that item. Now I see Rex is also inspected this item over here. Yeah. I want to see what Rex had to say about it, like some commentary added to it. It's not a must-have. It's just an idea how to create your brand standard, your reputation. Buyers want to know that how they should pre-bid on the inventory, place max bids. I believe they'll place higher max bids if they see and feel like they were there. They feel like they touched the item based upon the descriptions, and they will really appreciate the time and detail that you took to write up that inventory description. I can't stand it when I see a horrible inventory description, and because I don't trust it. I just feel like, okay, you just, phoned it in, or, whatever. And I'm not sure if it's really a 2019 or not, because it says it's purple and it's yellow. And, I want to see detail.
I can imagine, to put it simply, it's a marketing exercise. Your job is to create trust, and you can do that in lots of different ways. And maybe the encouragement, see if I'm tracking here. The encouragement maybe is you have to create trust, which you typically do in a physical person-to-person, face-to-face interaction.
Right.
But now that must be translated into digital space. Video is an easy first step in a sense of like, just put a camera there,
Yeah.
But then there's still more thinking about like, how are other ways I could create that trust touch point across the whole buyer journey and the whole operation that I'm creating here digitally.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
tracking?
No,
Okay.
I think exactly. Like when I go look at a lot of auction website storefronts, there's usually like an About Us page. I think that About Us page, I just mentioned like Rex as an inspector. So you see Rex there, he's an inspector. Yeah, that's great. But now once you hear Rex on the video and you can visualize Rex, you just saw it, whatever that is, like, how do they get to know you when they're not walking in your front door? Because feeling like you know someone, it feels good, or you see that like Rex looks like a nice guy and now I just bought from that company.
Yeah.
That's to me, like, it's not replacing an auctioneer. It's just adding to it. It's making you stand apart. You're trying to let your buyer audience know that you are trying to give them the information they need to make a good purchase.
That's right. That's right. It's like, keep the personality, keep what makes you and what makes you special. It's just a different medium. It's a different format. It looks a little bit different, but then you get the best of both worlds.
Have fun with it.
Yeah,
like,
I love that.
If you got to go to work, you might as well have fun.
Okay. I agree.
Yeah.
So is that the takeaway or is that the encouragement or, what's the nugget that you want folks to take away from this? Just have fun and try new things?
Well, I think just remember at the end of the day, it's not really the auction format. I think both of them have value, simulcast and online auctions. I think they both have value. But buyers are shopping for inventory, whatever it is you sell, whether it's lamps, houses, heavy equipment. The buyer is coming on the day you tell them to show up for the auction because they're interested in the inventory. And so they're comparing their options too. You may have an excavator for sale and I may have one. But if I have, more photos and videos on mine, then the customer's probably going to bid with me than the one that you have. So I just think you need to really be intentional about how you show up for your customer audience, and just remember that they're people too, and they want to know and trust, and be able to bid from their homes.
I'm glad you said people. I was thinking of that, something I've learned when thinking about doing marketing for, B2C or B2B. Some people are like, well, in B2B, it's all about, physical or like the business objectives and things like that, which it is. But people are still people.
Right.
Whether it's B2C or B2B, whether you're on Instagram or whether you're in person in a boardroom, they're still people and they still want to be, kind of build that trust and have that confidence that you can do the job. And you can do that in many different ways, whether it's digital or physical.
That's right.
That's
you're
encouraging.
asking your buyer audience to make a commitment, a financial commitment. And, people work hard for their money, most of them.
Yep.
Some of them earn it easily. But
Most people do, yeah.
I think, yeah. But I think, instead of just saying build trust, what I'm trying to say is that you are building trust. You are honoring their commitment by giving them a good description of the inventory. You're showing up and you're trying to give them the best quality. And let's hope that buyer, sees that value, that they're like, okay, Jodi adds all these pictures. She takes all this time. I trust those inventory descriptions. And when I interact with that business, I have a good experience.
I like that. That's a helpful clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, last question for you. What would be a great next step for somebody listening and they're like, okay, we've talked a lot about this technology shift. We've talked about, something like Simulcast. Obviously buy Innovate, go to innovatellc.com. But like what is, just as to provide value to listeners that are thinking about this leap of faith or thinking about, making this next step, what would you encourage them to do?
I think we talked about this a little bit in one of our previous episodes. I'm not sure if it's out yet, but 10% here, 10% there, 10% here makes a big difference. So if you are hesitant about this change, and how you write up your inventory or how you engage with your buyers in a digital presence, just start making some small changes. Add 3 or 4 more pictures, see if it makes a difference. And I think you'll notice very quickly, it does not take long to get buyer engagement. People appreciate details. I know when I go to a restaurant and somebody, remembers my name, or even if they don't remember my name, they remember that I walked in the door last week, that, and that I like water with no lemons. That's important to me. And I'll go back there instead of the new restaurant that opened next door, just because it makes you feel good.
I love that.
So I think if you just make a little bit of change, you will tell a big difference.
I love that. That's great. Remember the details, because your customers will remember them.
That's right.
Yeah, I love that.
People want to feel important, especially in a world that is so digital. Like there's a lack of human interaction. And, so take the chance that you can to connect with your buyers. And through inventory may not sound like your first thought, but trust me, like I'm seeing it work in action, that increasing the descriptions, details, photos, videos, I think add some personality to it so it's not so boring. You will notice a big difference in your buyer engagement.
This is great, actually. I am learning this in many different ways in my own life, and I love that you have brought that up. Like, details are everything.
Yes.
There's so much there that is so profound, and I really love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, thank you for letting me share today.
That's great. Well, Jodi, as always, I love our time together. I think this is a really great place to wrap this episode up. So we've been talking so much about technology and the different products within Innovate, as well as different shifts in the market landscape within the auction industry. And future episodes, we're going to be branching out a little bit and maybe having a few guests that we're very excited to tell you about. So stay tuned for more on that, and we will see you around.
Thank you, Brandon. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.